just like the U.S. and London, D.C., the EU, Australia, they're basically all owned by these same oligarchs running the same banking scam. So it's no surprise that you'd see something like this from October 23rd. Australia raises debt ceiling to a $500 billion to avoid U.S.-like crisis. The country will increase its debt limit by a $200 billion, or whatever, Australian $200 billion to $500 billion. Australia is projected to reach its current $300 billion ceiling in December. Most Americans accumulating debt faster than they're saving for retirement. So, majority of Americans with 401k type savings accounts are accumulating debt faster than they are setting money aside for the retirement, further undermining the nation's troubled system for an old age savings, says a new report. 3 in 5 workers defined contribution accounts are debt savers, meaning they're increasing mortgages, credit card balances, and installment loans are outpacing the amount of money they're able to save for retirement. Currently, workers with retirement savings accounts put more than 11% of their pay for retirement, 5% in their own accounts, and 6.2% in Social Security. And despite that, the $2.5 trillion the report says employers have poured into contribution accounts from 92 to 2012. The retirement readiness of most Americans has been slipping. And then you have current graduates will retire 12 years late thanks to student debt. The study predicts new median retirement age at 73. So it's because you're going to live longer, right? Then you can work it off. Well, actually, you're not. According to recent reports, we're living longer but sicker. In other words, you're going to have to pay for all the health care, overpriced health care, to live longer so you can pay your debt for your loans, for your student loans. Many of the people that are in charge, like I was talking about, they don't pay for student loans. They get separate education, better education, and it's all paid for in trust or whatever by their parents. They eat healthier food. So everything is better as far as health-wise, so they really don't need as much health care. They just live longer, and if they do, they have better health care than most. So today's graduates won't be able to retire until they're 73, a full 12 years later than the current average retirement of 61, thanks mostly to their debt loads. The median student graduates with $23,000 in debt and will devote about 7% of their income to paying it for the first 10 years of their career. It prevents any meaningful contributions towards retirement. It says that you'll end up paying $115,000 in the long run when you factor in the opportunity cost of not having that savings growing and making money. It says a new Wells Fargo survey of middle-class workers aged 25 to 75 found that 34% plan to work until at least their 80th birthday, and 37% don't expect to retire at all. Half of the nation's foreclosed homes are still occupied. Realty Track estimates that 47%, almost half of the nation's foreclosed homes are currently occupied. The percentage actually tops 60% in some hot housing markets like Miami and LA. Those that are still in these repossessed homes include former owners and renters. Either way, their time in their homes is mortgage and rent-free. A report says the number of U.S. homeless students is at a record level. 1.1 million U.S. students became homeless last school year. It's a 10% increase since the 2010-2011 school year. It's increased by 72% the number of homeless students since the beginning of the recession in 2007. 72%. North Dakota, they face a 212% increase. 52% of Walmart workers make under $25,000 a year. It says there's great opportunities, but there's more. The Walmart union-backed workers group that's been staging these protests recently asking for higher wages pointed out the point that great job opportunities for Walmart means that as many as 525,000 out of, I believe it's about 1 million employees that are full-time earn less than $25,000 a year. A representative from California said a decent wage is their demand, a livable wage of all things. The problem with people like Walmart or companies like Walmart is their unwillingness, not their inability to pay that wage. They say putting money into workers' wallets puts cash in the registers of retailers, and with it, the need for new employees, We estimate that a raise to $25,000 a year would lead to at least $11 billion of new GDP and generate 100,000 new jobs. Someone said Walmart does promote much faster than other retail organizations, but they say that doesn't take away from the fact that retail wages, including Walmart, still suck, which is true, right? And McDonald's tells workers to budget by getting a second job and turning off their heat. Remember this from July 15th? They're launching a website, helping low-wage workers make an average $8.25 an hour to budget. It says the site includes a sample budget journal for McDonald's employees that offers a laughable, inaccurate view of what it's like to budget on a minimum wage job. Not only does the budget leave a spot open for a second job, it also gives wholly unreasonable estimates for employees' costs: $20 a month for healthcare, $0 for heating, $600 a month for rent. Doesn't include any budget money for food or clothing. I bring this up because I saw this article from today, the 25th of October. McDonald's company helpline is telling basically broke workers to go on food stamps, so getting a second job. And workers who are unable to pay their bills or stay above the poverty line should find help from food pantries or enlist in the government benefit programs instead of seeking higher wages. Here's a household income and benefits chart from the Department of Public Welfare for Pennsylvania. This is actually going back to the Walmart article. It shows this chart with the amount of money that people make per year or bring in, $5,000, and here's that $25,000 mark, and that's actually where this highest welfare cliff is, where people will be making $25,000 but still need assistance, and then it drops after that. So that's what they were saying. They just give a better wage. They can live better, and then they don't have to depend on assistance. There's one person they're talking about. This McDonald's worker has worked for the McDonald's for over 10 years. It still earns $8.25 an hour, barely more than $7.25, thus $7.25 federal minimum wage. With help from a workers' rights group, Low Pay is Not Okay, she phoned the company's employee hotline known as McResource. A recording of the call was made available to CNN, which reported that she asked the helpline operator multiple questions regarding how McDonald's would help her pay her heating bill, or buying groceries, or whether she could afford to be able to help her sister's medical treatment. And despite never asking how much money she actually earned per hour or how many hours, the McDonald's representative said she definitely should be able to qualify for food stamps and heating assistance. Again, if they would just pay him more, they wouldn't have to do that, but those CEOs have to make humongous amounts of profits up there at corporate, where the people actually doing the work, they don't see that type of compensation for their time and energy. Census Bureau says that means-tested government benefit recipients outnumber full-time year workers. Americans who were recipients of basically government benefits in 2011 outnumbered the year-round full-time workers, according to the census. They also outnumbered the total population of the Philippines. That included both private sector and government workers. So you'll hear stuff like this from these types of sites about these people need to get out and get a job and stuff. And I've mentioned before about how the labor market is meant to compete with each other to drive down wages, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And so there aren't actually enough jobs for people. It's meant to be like that. So people fight over it. So then you'll have people that do have a job. Well, it's easy for them to say, well, these lazy bastards need to find work, right? And so they're the ones that are having to pay for it, these benefits, which sucks because it really should be going towards what? Corporate welfare. Everyone talks about it and says, handing out welfare to poor people, but they, a lot of these people they're usually neocons, and they'll turn a blind eye to the huge elephant in the room, which is corporate welfare. I mean, they were making huge amounts of profits here, whether it's Walmart or McDonald's. I think it was GE too that supposedly didn't pay any taxes or something, at least close to nothing. Government spends more on corporate welfare subsidies than social welfare programs. About $59 billion is spent on traditional social welfare programs, while $92 billion is spent on corporate subsidies. So they spent 50% more on corporate welfare than it did on food stamps and housing assistance in 2006. So you think about the CEOs, right? They get their end-of-the-year bonuses, a paltry $2.3 million. Just heard someone today telling about how they got a little bonus in their check, whatever. sewing factory or something like that, and they added 43 cents an hour. It came out to $20 or something on their paycheck. She's like, why even do that? Again, many neocons in that sector will always ignore another elephant in the room. That's the military. Each U.S. troop in Afghanistan now costs $2.1 million, nearly double. So the cost of each troop in Afghanistan will nearly double in the last year of the war to $2.1 million, according to a new analysis of the Pentagon's budget. $500 per gallon for gas. This is they're saying it's war spending. That's how much they're paying. Was the figure paid with U.S. tax dollars to a contractor building a hospital in rural Afghanistan, according to a new report. And the U.S. military, they're talking about taking huge cuts or something like that. And the best thing they can be doing right now is changing the uniforms. I saw this other article, the Army's $5 billion new uniform already being replaced 8 years after spending $5 billion on a heavily criticized universal camouflage pattern. The Army's back at the drawing board for a new design that's estimated to cost another $4 billion. You got the Marine Corps, look at this. Possible new Marines uniform dismissed as too girly. What the heck is that? It really does. It looks like the French Foreign Legion. If you type it up, you can see it. You probably remember this article I covered recently from the 19th. JP Morgan Chase reaches a tentative $13 billion settlement with Justice Department. It's related to the mortgage-backed security business for basically residential mortgages. It was like a record number too, but Bank of America liable for fraud from the 24th. Department of Justice is seeking a penalty of under $1 billion for mortgage lawsuits. The verdict is a win for the U.S. government as it makes one of the few cases stemming from the financial crisis that is taken to trial. And it might, it sounds nice and everything that the government's going to, win this, get $1 billion or whatever from them in a shakedown. But in reality, what's going to happen? Well, the customers are probably going to have to pay higher interest rates, or the customers are going to end up paying for it. I love this photo here. This is a homeless man just sitting there like, oh shit. U.S. inequality at historic high, surpassing roaring 20s. This is from September 12th of 2013, and this follows this. Gap between rich and poor in Russia among world's biggest. And this is the model. Whether there was a kind of a shift of power from the west to the east recently, it doesn't really matter because it's going to be the same type of inequality. The Russia left behind from October 15th, one resident says gradually, everything is rotting. The people on the top do not know what is happening down here. They have their own world. They eat differently. They sleep on different sheets. They drive different cars. They don't know what is going on here. If I needed one word to describe it, I would say it is a swamp, a stagnant swamp. As it was, or so it is, nothing is changing. Washington opposes new sanctions on Iran. The Undersecretary of the State for Political Affairs said on Friday that Iran and the U.S. are at the beginning of a path towards mutual understanding. All of a sudden, it's like, why is that, right? All of a sudden. It's like I mentioned this before, and people say, Depka file, that's a Mossad-runs website. Obama's potential release of $12 billion of frozen Iranian assets will be followed by $35 billion from Europe. It said here they're willing to offer Iran these funds in installments against steps to cut down on its nuclear program. Well, we know that's not the case. It's part of the Western financial system that's pillaging and selling, like I said, assets to try to get what they can. Shore up cash to keep this system going. Why they're backing off on the whole Iranian thing, because Iran, they just announced 34 new nuke sites working with Russia to boost the nuclear program. So they're actually being blatantly obvious about they're actually expanding their nuclear program. And all of a sudden, Gulf officials to be in Syria soon. They're going to see top-level Gulf officials in Damascus. They're basically concluding that their past policies were mistaken. Actually, recently, Pentagon just sold them bunker busters, cruise missiles, an $11 billion deal to these Gulf monarchies. But Iran should be wary, though. I wouldn't trust the West, because it says here they're still writing legislation to authorize military force against Iran. They say the preconditions are so stringent that they severely diminish the chances of reaching a diplomatic settlement with Iran on the nuclear issue. The UN Atomic Agency suffered a malware attack recently. It was the second embarrassing IT slip-up over the past year. Nuclear officers recently napped with the blast door left open. Air Force fires general in charge of nuclear missile force. It was the second one in a week. 9 generals fired and 2 military leaders suspended. Thank you.